Episode 180 of the Interpretation Station is Call to Order. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. For you not familiar with the finer points of British culture, you maybe if you want to know why I said 180 in that style, you need to be familiar with one of the sort of finer points of British culture, the darts. Sport for great athletes, darts, very popular. I believe it's popular in the Netherlands as well. And the maximum score is 180, 3 times treble 20. And the caller, the MC, always shouts 180 in that style. But never mind, it's not really going to make a huge difference to your future professional lives. However, what might make a big difference to your future professional lives is the following episode of the Interpretation Station. And we have another treat for you today. Okay, you may have noticed the Interpretation Station has been dabbling in other fora of late. I think we did a couple of episodes taken from the World Health Assembly, which is under the auspices of the World Health Organization. So we were looking at topics like universal healthcare, polio, and so continuing along in that vein, we've managed to the interpretation through its moles in the various organizations dotted around the globe has activated another mole in the World Meteorological Organization, the WMO. We've got an episode coming up for you from the WMO, and this is actually thanks to my sometimes colleague Malika Kadirova, who actually worked there. She did a contract there. I think this was called the World Meteorological Congress. It was like the plenary, so she worked there and got me this statement. Actually, she got me 2 statements. She got me one by Niger and she got me one by Russia. Now, the Russian one, for those of you with Russian accommodation, I'm going to do that combined with the Russian statement from the WHO in a single episode. So if you're wondering why he's done a French statement from the WHO and a Spanish statement from the WHO, where's my Russian? Well, the Russian's coming. Just be patient. I shall film it while I am on holiday. You know, I'm going on holiday. Tomorrow I've got to work. It's my last day of work tomorrow. And then I'm off for 5 weeks. I'm going to be away. So for today's episode, we are going to look at this statement delivered by Niger at the WMO, and a lot of this vocab was very new to me, and Malika has given me a lot of help with some of that vocab, and it's really interesting. It's stuff I've never really done before, expressions, jargon I don't run into, so I think we're going to have a really exciting episode, okay? So without further ado, I will just descend down into the corner and share the screen with you. Okay, so like I said, this is by Niger, and Niger is getting a lot of airtime on the Interpretation Station currently. It's really lifting its profile. I hear this is going to lead to a huge boost in tourist numbers for Niger, all the episodes that they're getting featured on the Interpretation Station, I'm sure. Anyone from Niger watching? Do I have any fans out in Niger? If I do, put in the comments, okay? If you're from Niger watching this, let me know. Big hello to you. Salut. Okay, so let's have a look then at what the Nigerian, I believe that is the adjective, okay, to distinguish them from Nigerian. So I think the adjective is the people of the Nigerians. That's how I refer to them anyway. Okay, so here we go then. Thank you, Mr. Moderator. J'ai fait cette présentation. Okay, I'm making this presentation. Every fans of the Interpretation Station know that I like to deliver. I'm delivering this presentation on behalf of Mr. Umaru Malam Alma, Minister for Transport and second Vice President or Vice Chair, I'm not certain, of the African Ministerial Conference on Meteorology. Okay, AMCOMET. So we can just refer to that organization as AMCOMET. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, ministers, president of the WMO. So I'm informed that the WMO has a president, not a chair. Monsieur le Conseiller Spécial, so the special advisor to the Secretary General on climate action and a just transition. So I presume if he's a special advisor to the Secretary General, you can probably call him later on if he refers back to him, the SASG. You have the SRSG, the Special Representative of the Secretary General, the SESG, Special Envoy of the Secretary General. These are sort of acronyms, you come across at the UN. And I'm sure you can get away with calling this guy the SASG as Special Advisor. On climate action and a just transition. So apparently Malika tells me this is a popular expression at the WMO and at the ILO. This is a big deal, the just transition. And just for a bit of background, you see I'm looking up here on Wikipedia. Just transition is a framework developed by the trade union movement to encompass a range of social interventions needed to secure workers' rights and livelihoods when economies are shifting to sustainable production, primarily combating climate change and protecting biodiversity. In Europe, advocates for a just transition want to unite social and climate justice, for example, for coal workers in coal-dependent developing regions who lack employment opportunities beyond coal. And then here the definition. In the past years, a number of organisations have deployed the concept of a just transition with respect to environmental and/or climate justice. With regards to climate change mitigation, the IPCC defines just transition as follows: a set of principles, processes and practices that aim to ensure that no people, workers, places, sectors, countries or regions are left behind in the transition from a high carbon to a low carbon economy. So there's a lot of, I guess, overlap there between ILO and WMO, those issues. Okay, Secretary General of the ITU, so that's the International Telecommunications Union. Okay, they're based in Geneva as well, for those who don't know. Secretary General of the International Federation of the Red Cross and Red Crescent. That's quite a long name. I mean, I think you can, if it takes you by surprise, you can just basically say that Mr. Secretary General of the Red Cross and Red Crescent societies. Moderator, ladies and gentlemen. Let me first of all congratulate OMM, the MO, for organising this high-level dialogue on implementation of the Initiative d'Alerte Précoce. That's something you'll come across in a lot of different contexts. The Early Warning Initiative, early warning, Alerte Précoce, always make sure you have that. In fact, pour tous des Nations Unies. I jumped in a bit too quickly there because this is actually the name of it's a bit of a campaign that Malika reliably informs me. So it's an early warning initiative for all, written that's like an acronym, EW number 4 all. That is the sort of the buzz word. EW for all. So yeah. In the margins of this 19th session of the World Meteorological Congress, you can probably call it the WMC, I expect. I would also like to thank the various pré-opinants, so it means basically speakers, okay? I want to thank the previous speakers, whatever, for their words, for their les mots et notes d'accueil, maybe you can see, for their words of welcome, introduction, et d'orientation fort instructif, and they're very instructive if you just want to use the cognate, very enlightening. Orientation, I think that this came up also in the WHO statement. My go-to there is guidance, okay? They talk about désorientation as well. They use it in the plural as well. I would probably say they're very instructive. They're words of welcome, introduction, and very instructive guidance. Excellencies, we hear nos anciens, our elders, I think we would say in English, right? We hear our elders often say that the times have changed, that nothing is like what it was before. This is nos repères ambiants. So actually, Malika was going to say our bearings, our environmental bearings. For repère. When I hear repère, the first two things that come to my mind are benchmark and yardstick. I would have said that our environmental benchmarks have been lost. But I think I really like bearings, that our environmental. I think in English we might say that we have lost our environmental bearings. If I had the chance to prepare the text before, I would say it like that we have lost all our environmental bearings. And that we are witnessing hydrometeorological events de plus en plus intense et récurrent que par le passé. I mean, again, if you could prepare it and you were just hanging back from the speaker, you would say, we're witnessing increasingly intense hydrometeorological events which are more frequent than in the past. That's probably how he would do it. Again, I'm thinking of that. If I didn't have the text, I'd probably hear événements hydrométéorologiques. Hydrometeorological is already quite a mouthful, so I'd probably say, okay, hydrometeorological events that are increasingly intense and more frequent, more recurring, you can say, than in the past. These extreme events in the Sahel in general, and that's the region of, that's where Niger is located. It's in the Sahel, and in Niger in particular, qui ont pour nom, okay, flowery French, qui ont pour nom, you would just say including. You don't get into who bear as their name. That's silly. So just which include inondation, floods, sécheresse, droughts, vagues de chaleur, heat waves. This is important weather vocabulary, among others. Are the conséquences évidentes, are the clear consequences, des bouleversements, so a sort of go-to I have for bouleversement would perhaps be upheavals, disruptions also, sort of unprecedented upheavals of the current world climate, the current global climate. Selon le dernier rapport du GIEC, and that's very important, okay, le GIEC, okay, that's the IPCC, the International Panel on Climate Change, very important. Very important acronym to know, okay? So according to the last IPCC report, these extreme meteorological events ont vocation à s'accentuer. I'd probably say are likely to get worse, to worsen, both in terms of duration as well as in intensity in the future. Could you say that are likely to accentuate these extreme meteorological events, likely to accentuate both in duration as well as in intensity in the future? Maybe you could say that. Niger, a Sahara-Sahelian country, which a connu I would probably say here a connu. Okay, experienced, I guess. Sometimes you're not quite certain with a connu where it's going to go. I might perhaps, if I want to hedge my bets, I might just wait and say which in 1973 and 1984, and then what did it connaître? Les sécheresses les plus désastreuses. It's just that you don't know if the connaître is going to be something good or bad in theory. So if you just hold back, so it's like, okay, it's suffered, but if you want to, this sort of suffered the most disastrous droughts in its history, or if you want a more neutral word than to suffer, experienced. So I guess here, if you want to render connu immediately, you just say experience, because that can be, you can experience something good or something bad. Whereas in suffer, you're already committing yourself that it's going to be something bad, right? Maybe it's similar, you wouldn't say enjoy. Okay, that would be committing yourself as well. You can't really enjoy droughts, right? And since 1984 has integrated the issue of environment into all its development strategies and policies. À l'issue de, following a national debate on the environment called Maradi. And if you're wondering what the reference to Maradi is, well, I'm just looking it up. Maradi is the second largest city in Niger, the administrative center of Maradi region. It's also this, okay, blah, blah. Maradi has long been a merchant city on the route north from Kano, Nigeria. Okay, just a bit of FYI. So, okay, carry on. So since 2010, in addition to recurring droughts, catastrophic flooding, I think we can say in English, catastrophic flooding has taken place virtually every year, as well as deadly des séquences caniculaires. I think you just say a heat wave. Okay, deadly heat waves, such as the one in 2010. To address, pour faire face à ces chocs climatiques, to deal with, to combat climate shocks. You can just call them shocks. Okay, you can just use the cognate. That's, they use that quite a lot in environmental speak. To address climate shocks which have intensified in recent decades, Niger has developed, drawn up, crafted several policies, programs, and strategies to bolster the resilience of populations, to improve resilience, enhance resilience. These include, now here we are, we're going to have a long laundry list of national programs, and it's important, you're going to come across this many times when working, okay? Just don't get too worried about how you render them. Don't obsess with looking up and finding the exact name of all these programs, because often it's impossible to do so. If you have time and you're prepared, I don't think you've got to look up exactly what the wording is of these programs. You can mainly sort of wing these kinds of things. Just focus on the nouns, okay? Okay, you'll see what I mean. So, Programme de Renaissance Act. Okay, so the Renaissance Act program number 3 of Bazoum Mohammed, President of the Republic, SEM, Son Excellence, head of state, in chapter 5. And you can, like, when you're reading these laundry lists, you can sort of afford to drop a bit of grammar. That's another thing, because he's just reading off as a list. So you can, like, say, bolstering resilience populations to crises and shocks. Also, maybe he's listing them. Social Economic Development Plan 2022-26, en son axe 3, Programme 6, you just say, like, Pillar 3, Program 6, Sub-Program 6, bolstering resilience to food insecurity for the most vulnerable to shocks and crises. Initiative 3N, Nigériens nourrissent les Nigériens. I would just say Nigerians feed Nigerians. And then Malika said to me, to keep the idea of the 3 N's, she's just said, Nigerians nourish Nigerians. Okay, that was a nice little solution as well, but you can just say feed, I think. And then dans son axe 3, just say pillar 3. So initiative 3N, Nigerians feed Nigerians. Pillar 3, improving resilience of vulnerable groups to climate change, crises, and disasters. Next, you can often just say, if you want to separate them, next, national strategy for disaster risk reduction. Now, this is a bit of a package, okay? Disaster risk reduction is a sort of concept in its own right, so you really want to be getting that at night. As opposed to saying reducing risks of disasters, to sound really fluid, you want to say disaster risk reduction. Process of implementation of agricultural indexed insurance. Is that what it was? Yeah, agricultural index insurance. She did look up some of these names, so that was in fact. I might have said, I think if I just heard it on the fly, I'd probably said the index agricultural insurance, but either's fine. Which also calls for analyses and climate products for implementation. Creation and implementation of a national framework for climate services under the coordination of the National Meteorological Department. Direction, when I hear direction, I tend to go with department. Also, now she said to me also, apparently in WA you can often just shorten meteorological to Met. So I might say the National Met Department. It's a lot easier to say than the National Meteorological Department. Establishment under the presidency of the cabinet of the Prime Minister, or under the chairmanship, doesn't matter, of a national committee for prévention et gestion des crues. So crue, flood, okay, for flood prevention and management. Interesting word, crue. I'd always thought crue was like talking about like high tides. And so if I'm looking here on word reference, rise in water levels, rise in level, spate, and flood. But I think flood is your best, safest option here, okay? So flood prevention and management. It's okay, maybe put a full stop here. Dont the Plan of Action 2023-25 was developed, and one of its main activities was establishing a federal early warning system. De l'initiation par mes soins. So basically, the initiation by myself. It was me that did it, okay? By myself, of the development and dissemination, okay? The D and the D, that's how I always remember. That's the easiest solution, I think, for diffusion when you hear dissemination. So development and dissemination of bulletins de suivi, so follow-up reports. I think better than bulletins. You could get away with bulletins, to be honest. Maybe follow-up reports. And okay, prévision hebdomadaire de la pluviométrie. So again, Malika came in was very helpful with this, and we had weekly rainfall forecasts. Okay, pluviométrie, rainfall. So yeah, a good idea that we were discussing it. Maybe for prévision go with forecast, and for bulletin go with the report as a general rule. Okay, with a view to determining areas at, I think go either or, areas or risks at risk of drought and above all flooding, included full stop perhaps, and information is conveyed to the population during all councils of ministers during the 2022 rain season. At the same time, l'État de Niger, maybe you can just, if you're going fast, just drop l'État, you say Niger, I tend to launch with entamé, has launched a process of modernizing its national Met department. Maybe you just drop national, can you drop national? Through renforcement conséquent. So when I hear conséquent, use an adjective in that sort of context, I tend to say substantial, by substantially enhancing its network of meteorological observation in automatic, synoptic and agro-meteorological stations. Yeah, that's a bit of a mouthful, isn't it? I mean, fortunately, it's all pretty much cognates from French into English. Yeah, substantially bolstering its Met observation network. Again, maybe here you could just say Met. Do away with eological. It's Met observation network in automatic synoptic stations and in agro-meteorological stations, creating and equipping a centre de calcul, a computing center is apparently what these things are called, with ordinateur HPC de grande vitesse. Again, some of this was new to me. So apparently HPC computers, this is in English I guess, high performance computers, HPC. So it's a bit of a tautology here, because that in itself, means that they are high speed, right? High performance computers de grande vitesse. So you could probably drop this. So, I don't know, you say high speed computers or HPC computers. It's a bit strange to say high speed HPC computers. That would be a bit strange to say. As well as 8 regional Met centers. Let's get rid of the horologique, that have already been built and equipped at the level of the country's regions to conduct assistance météorologique de proximité. So for de proximité, I tend to go with community as you have la police de proximité, community policing, right? So I tend to, for that reason, service de proximité, assistance, it all tends to be community. But I think here you could also say local, so with perhaps even better here, local meteorological assistance. Furthermore, il me plaît de signaler, I'm pleased to note that Niger also has a Ministry for Humanitarian Action and Disaster Management, and then which is very active. You're unlikely to have waited all the way to the end to hear très actif, so you're probably going to have to add that très actif by saying which is very active, as well as a General Department for Civil Protection. And again, très dynamique, which is very dynamic, which regularly conveys warning messages from the National Met Department to the population through public and private media and telephone companies, qui ont tous l'obligation de diffuser, so who all have a duty to disseminate these alert messages under the laws on the alert code. Okay, it's getting a bit clunky here, this whole sentence, right? qui ont tous l'obligation, okay, who are all legally bound, who are all, I mean, you could just say who are all obliged to disseminate these warning messages under the relevant alert code laws. La DGPC. One thing that can throw you sometimes when you're interpreting from French is, okay, they'll suddenly throw in the acronym, yet you need to sort of be paying attention. As they said before in the previous sentence, the Direction Générale de la Protection Civile. But if they say it there and then they just suddenly cuss out calling it the DGPC, you need to just be aware that you need to, the speaker, particularly if it's someone who's come from the country itself, he might just suddenly switch to what he sees as being the sort of in-house language, calling it the DGPC. So I mean, he's just referring to the direction, so the department. If in doubt, just say that the department has for over 6 years a civil protection school sous-régional, so a sub-regional civil protection school du niveau licence at bachelor level. I think that's perhaps the best way to convey that. When you get here du niveau licence at batch. I mean, maybe if you could prepare, had time to prepare. The department has over 6 years had a sub-regional civil protection bachelor school at Niamey. The training there is based on running a crisis management center, on risk assessment. Sounds better than risk evaluation. Okay, the evaluation always seems a bit French sounding to me, so I tend to say risk assessment, crisis and disaster prevention. Apparently this is a bit of a package, right? Planning, planification des interventions, planning interventions, and strategies for humanitarian actors in Nigeria and in the sub-region. Ladies and gentlemen, or again, if you're going fast, you don't have a text, I would just drop that. Based on the above, we can affirm that Niger has the main pieces of the puzzle. Puzzle parcellaire. I think I would just skip parcellaire. I think because English would just say, unless I'm really missing out some finer point here, I think you just say there's the main pieces of the puzzle when it comes to best valoriser, I often say to leverage, best leveraging and establishing a system from pour en faire un système. Dans cette optique, that's a sort of one of those things, sort of phrase you can leave out again if you're sort of going fast. Maybe you say along those lines, Niger believes that the EW for all of the Secretary General, of the UN Secretary General, whose implementation has been conferred, has been mandated to the WTO with the cooperation of other partners, is an opportunity to help us set up a national multi-risk early warning system covering at least the three major risks, the most relevant, les plus courants. Again, remember, if you've jumped in too early, and there's more adjectives to come, a good way of getting out of it is just to repeat the noun as well. So covering at least the three major risks, the most current risks, the most pressing risks, in this case the risks of flood, drought and heat waves. To do this, Niger expects from this platform enhanced capacities for its department. I forgot what DMN is. What's DMN again? Okay, see, he talks about the Direction de la Meteorologie Nationale. I wasn't certain, so I just threw in the department. Okay, to do this, Niger expects from this platform enhanced capacities from its Met department to help it to, as follows. Okay, rendre opérationnel, operationalize the computer center pour tourner les modèles à air limité. Now these are, thank you very much here, Malika again, I'll say immediately, limited area models, okay? So what do we do with models? I think we run models, okay? Pour tourner, don't we turn models? To run limited air models for high resolution forecasts, prévision forecasts, remember. Former des cadres, train personnel in the sphere of, and this is again been a very useful input here from Malika. Prévision numérique du temps is numerical weather prediction, which is often referred to as NWP. Did you know that? Because I tell you what, I certainly didn't. Numerical weather prediction. Okay, in the sphere of numerical weather prediction, modeling, system maintenance, climate forecasting, and developing scenarios for the main socioeconomic sectors, as well as for senior technicians and engineers. Techniciens supérieurs, I'd say, senior. Pour voir des stages de perfectionnement. Maybe stage de perfectionnement, advanced workshops, providing advanced workshops to acquire practical expertise in the spheres of meteorology and applied climatology. Again, if you can think of anything better to say for stage de perfectionnement, please do. Remember in the comments, put stuff in the comments, right? Anything you want to say about solutions I've offered, or if you have better solutions yourselves. I'm sure there's like an expression in English, something to do with upskilling that I've heard. Yeah, upskilling is a piece of horrible sounding modern day management jargon, but I think this kind of statement is quite suited to really nasty modern day management jargon. So that might work. You could maybe put provide upskilling workshops to acquire practical expertise, spheres of meteorology and applied climatology. Enhance technical capacities through transfer of technologies. Mesdames, Messieurs, ladies and gentlemen, before concluding mon propos, just before concluding, allow me to sincerely thank. Remercier très vivement. Don't get so literal with the French. Lively thanks. Okay, just remember what do we say in English? To sincerely thank, to give heartfelt thanks to the WMO. For its consistent ongoing support to Niger, just drop l'état du, when it comes to developing its meteorological sector, as well as to all other partners who have helped Niger in one way or another. In particular, I'd like to reiterate a request that I formulated last year during the AMCOMET meeting, which was held in the margins of the SADC conference. SADC, of course, is the Southern African Development Council Committee Conference. Southern African Development Community. The Southern African Development Community. Intergovernmental organization, right? You do, yeah, you come across SADC. I think it's just SADC in all languages. In the margins of the SADC conference on its early warning action plan in Maputo, as well as the second vice chair of AMCOMET, the organization of the conference on the plan of action for the West Africa sub-region in Niamey, the capital of Niger. I'm sure there's a verb missing. Basically, I think he's offering to host that conference, right? I think the request was to organize the conference on the plan of action for the West Africa sub-region in Niamey, the capital of Niger. I thank you. Okay, so just to make it more interesting, I'm going to just do a quick site translation to the whole text. Maybe something new will crop up. Maybe you can just see a little bit how I deal with problematic moments when I'm interpreting. Maybe some new solutions might suddenly spring to mind as I'm going through this. So here we go. Thank you, moderator. I deliver this presentation on behalf of Umaru Malam Alma, Minister of Transport, Second Vice Chair of AMCOMET, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, ministers, President of the WMO, SASG on climate action and the just transition, ITU Secretary General, Secretary General of the Red Cross and Red Crescent. Moderate, ladies and gentlemen, let me first congratulate WMO on organising this high-level dialogue on implementation of the Early Warning Initiative for All in the margins of this 19th session of the WMC. I would also like to congratulate previous speakers for their words of welcome, introduction, and very helpful guidance. We hear our elders often say that the times have changed, that nothing is as it was before, that we have lost our environmental bearings, and that we're witnessing hydrometeorological events that are increasingly intense and more occurring than in the past. These extreme events in the Sahel in general and in Niger in particular, which include floods, droughts, heat waves, are the clear consequences of unprecedented disruptions in the current global climate. According to the last IPCC report, these extreme meteorological events are likely to accentuate both in duration and intensity in the future. Niger, a Saharan country, which in 1973 and 84 underwent the most disastrous droughts in its history, has since 1984 integrated the issue of the environment in all its strategies and development policies following a national debate on the environment called Maradi. Since 2010, in addition to recurring droughts, catastrophic flooding has taken place virtually every year, as well as deadly heat waves like that of 2010. To address climate shocks which have exacerbated in recent decades, Niger has crafted several policies, programs and strategies to bolster the resilience of the population. These include the Renaissance Act 3 program of His Excellency Bazoum Mohammed, President of the Republic, in Chapter 5, bolstering resilience of populations against crises and shocks. The Economic Social Development Plan 2022-26, Pillar 3, Programme 6, Sub-Programme 6, bolstering resilience to food insecurity for the most vulnerable against shocks and crises. The 3N Initiative, Nigerians Feed Nigerians, Pillar 3, improving resilience of vulnerable groups to climate change, crises and disasters. The National Risk Reduction Strategy, SNRRC 2021, the process of implementing the agricultural indexed insurance, which is underway, which calls for analyses and for climate products for its implementation, creation and implementation of a national framework for climate services under the coordination of the National Met Department, establishment under the chairmanship of the Cabinet, the PM, a national Committee on Flood Prevention and Management. Its action plan 2023-2025 was drawn up. One of its main activities is establishing a federal early warning system. Initiating by myself the drawing up and dissemination of follow-up reports and weekly rainfall forecasts with a view to determining zones at risk of drought and above all of flooding. Information on this is conveyed to the population during all Council of Ministers during the rain season in 2022. At the same time, Niger has launched a process of modernising its National Met Department through substantially bolstering its network of Met observation in automatic synoptic stations and agrometeorological stations. It has created and equipped a computing centre with HPC computers, as well as 8 regional Met centres, which have already been built and equipped at the level of the regions in the country to conduct local Met assistance. Furthermore, I'm pleased to state that Niger also has a Ministry for Humanitarian Action and Disaster Management, which is very active, as well as a General Department for Civil Protection, a very dynamic department which regularly relays alert messages from the National Met Department to the population through all public and private media and telephone companies, which are duty-bound to disseminate these alert warnings under the relevant alert code laws. The department also, for more than 6 years, has had a sub-regional civil protection school at bachelor level in Niamey. Training there is based on running crisis management centres, risk assessment, crisis and disaster prevention, planning and interventions, and strategies by humanitarian actors in Niger and in the sub-region. Based on the above, we can state that Niger has the main pieces in the puzzle when it comes to best leveraging and putting together a system. On that basis, Niger believes that the early warning system for all of the UN Secretary General, whose implementation has been mandated to the WMO with the cooperation of other partners, is an opportunity to help us establish a national early warning system covering at least the three most relevant, the most pressing major risks of the risk of flooding, drought and heat waves. To do this, Niger expects the platform to get bolstered capacity building from its national Met department to help it to, inter alia, operationalize the computing center to run limited air models for high resolution forecasts, train personnel in the sphere of, what was it called? Numerical weather prediction, system maintenance, climate forecasting, developing scenarios for the main socioeconomic sectors as well as for senior technicians and engineers, provide upskilling workshops to acquire expertise, practical expertise in the spheres of meteorology and applied climatology, build technical capacities through transfer of technologies. Before concluding, let me thank very sincerely the WMO for its consistent ongoing support to Niger when it comes to developing its meteorological sector, as well as to other partners who have helped Niger in one form or another. In particular, I'd like to reiterate the request that I made last year during the AMCOMET meeting, which was held in the margins of the SADC conference, on its early warning action plan in Maputo. As the second vice chair of AMCOMET, the organization to organize the conference on the plan of action for the West Africa sub-region in Niamey, the capital of Niger. I thank you very much. Okay, so that's how I would do it, perhaps in real time. There's a couple of things I maybe missed out. Some of them tactically, because I couldn't in that moment quite think of the best way of formulating it. There was something to do with multi-risk. What was the bit? I think I missed out multi-risk here. A national early warning multi-risk system, but no big deal. Okay, so hopefully that gives you an idea of how I would do it, guys. I hope you have found that useful. Your introduction to work at the World Meteorological Organization. If you have found it useful, I would kindly please ask you to do the usual like, share, subscribe. Put any comments, any new vocab that you've learned maybe here, or any new vocab that I've perhaps missed out and you want to teach me. Put that in the comments. And really, nothing more is left to be said now other than that. Episode 180 of the Interpretation Station stands adjourned.
The train is now leaving the Interpretation Station. We hope you enjoyed your visit. Until next time.